Dear comrades and friends, it is with immense happiness that I participate in this national webinar, which is being held under the auspices of the Central Committee of the CPIM. It is in the fitness of things that the CC chose to hold a detailed discussion on what we have achieved and what is left be achieved. This offers a platform to analyze the present national situation against the backdrop of more than 7 decades of Indian independence. 73 years is not too small a span of time to take stock of what has happened since independence. Before getting into it, we have to look at the emergence of the nationalist movement and the lessons it taught us. As everybody knows, we are confronted with a series of threats against the very existence of us as a nation. We have to collectively ponder over this and find out the ways to tide over the crisis. The economic sovereignty is sought to be done away with by the forces of international finance capital. Driven by the greed of quick and speculative profits, they attempt to constrain the fiscal and monetary policies of nation states. This has been detrimental not only to us but also to many nations which threw off the colonial yoke in the last century and embarked on the path of indigenous development. On top of these efforts want to see that our country is balkanized on communal lines. It is against this backdrop that we have to reflect upon the past and chalk out a democratic, secular and socialist alternative. The first 3 decades of the last century witnessed major events at the world level. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 in Russia not only overthrew one of the most oppressive regimes but also kindled the spirit of freedom in many colonial countries. Working class movements which sprang up in small groups quickly gathered support from the emerging industrial working class and the peasantry. The colonial rulers attempted to put down these movements through false cases and imprisoned the leaders of the movements for long years. The infamous Meerut and Kanpur conspiracy cases against the nascent Communist Party are examples of this. Apart from the emergence of working class parties, the beginning of the 1920s also witnessed the Congress Party, which was a movement of limited participation in its early days, becoming a mass movement engaged in popular struggles like the non-cooperation movement. Though Congress was very much present in the national political scenario, it was the rise of the left that gave a political content to the national agenda. The left also contributed in big way in evolving the economic, social and political policy too. The intervention of the left accelerated the anti-imperialist upsurge all over the country in a gateway. The peasant worker struggles got a genuine fillip as a result of the joint movements that witnessed during that era, and it enthused the anti-imperialist national struggle throughout the length and breadth of our country. The declaration of Purna Swaraj as a goal in place of dominion status was a substantial contribution of the left stream of Indian politics. Towards the end of the second decade of the last century, the capitalist countries underwent a major economic depression which resulted in large-scale unemployment and stagnation. Discontent against British imperialism grew in a big way in the 1930s. Socialist ideas gathered momentum within the Congress Party under the banner of Congress Socialist Party. Congress itself was compelled to adopt one economic program with a substantial redistributive content in its Karachi session of 1930. This is the beginning of socialist ideas gaining acceptance within the nationalist movement. Agitation sprang up against native kingdoms which followed many obscurantist practices. The movement to secure the rights of the oppressed castes for walking through the streets adjoining temples and for temple entry in the state of Travancore is part of this. The peasant struggles of Malabar, which challenged landlordism, were sought to be given a communal color. The progressive forces grew fighting against these kinds of malicious propaganda, which sought to divide the toiling masses and foil their united struggles. Freedom struggle culminated with the memorable fight by the Royal Indian Navy personnel who raised the flags of the Congress, Communists and the Muslim League. The British left India in 1947. Could we put an end to our struggles? The answer is an emphatic no. At the dawn of independence, the lessons learned from the freedom movement became highly valuable in the onward struggle against social and economic inequality. Our nation building was a task to be accomplished by weaving threads of unity among diversities. A foremost task was the linguistic reorganization of the states. The nationalist movement accepted this as early as 1921 by reorganizing the provincial Congress committees on linguistic basis. But after attaining independence, our rulers were very reluctant to implement this. The important lesson of popular resistance from the freedom struggle was practiced to get this demand accepted. The fast unto death of Poti Sriramalu was an example. The intellectual content given by communist leaders like Comrade E.M.S. P. Sundaraiah catalyzed this movement. Finally, the regime had to accept linguistic reorganization of the states by 1956. The acceptance of the Karachi economic program got reflected in the directive principles of the constitution to a certain extent. But the progress was halting and big struggles were required to achieve redistribution of the prime asset land, which even today is a dream in vast areas of our country. Only in states where left parties come to power, land reforms have been implemented. In the first decade of independence, the Congress under Nehru's leadership accepted the role of public sector in India's economic development. The Avadi session of the Congress in 1956 stated that building a socialistic pattern of society should be the aim. This remained more of a statement than a reality. Since 1990s, even the rhetoric of socialism has been thrown to winds. The neoliberal economic policies have cast away the lessons of economic redistribution, which had been part of our political ethos since the early days of our freedom movement. Our constitution was drafted on the basis of the values that the nationalist movement had put forward as noble causes. It emphasized the need to strengthen our sovereignty and self-reliance. Taking a cue from that, the Union government, right from the very beginning, highlighted the role of the public sector and made it a decisive factor in the building up of our economy. To a great extent, it strengthened our economy. Great institutions were launched in the public sector and it paved the way for the growth of allied sectors too. However, with the advent of the policy of globalization, the Congress governments since 1990s started to sell off the prestigious public sector institutions. The BJP government, which assumed office close on the heels of the Congress governments, too pursued the very same policy with renewed vigor. It went to the extent of doing away with the gains that we accrued in the post-independence period. The land for the tiller was a slogan which came up during the nationalist movement, as peasants had a decisive role in our freedom struggle. However, the Congress government chose to ignore it when it came to power, and the slogans highlighting the demands of the peasants were given a go-by. Had surplus land been distributed among the landless, the purchasing power of the masses would have gone up, and in turn, it would have streamlined the economy in a big way. Instead of adopting such a path, the Congress government went in for the policy of globalization, which was detrimental to the interests of the nation on the one hand and beneficial to the corporates on the other. The Congress government and the subsequent BJP regime cut short even whatever subsidy the agricultural sector was getting previously. It was as per the dictates of the international financial institutions which are being run by imperialists. During the freedom struggles, everybody dreamed of a world in which everyone will get education and employment. This hope also inspired the youth to join the mainstream of the independence struggle in a big way. The disenchantment among the youth on this count was grossly misused by divisive and communal forces. India still continues as a country that has the record number of illiterates. The non-alignment policy also was the heritage that we received from the freedom movement. It enabled us to chalk out an independent course which kept capitalist and imperialist countries at a distance. So many developing countries inspired by this policy came under the umbrella of the non-alignment policy, and India rose to the leadership of that movement with enhanced prestige. It was as per that policy that we decided not to have any diplomatic relations with Israel, which had unleashed a series of heinous genocides on the helpless Palestinians, who were craving for a land of their own. It was rather unfortunate that India, during the regime of the Congress, re-established diplomatic ties with Israel and allowed them to open their diplomatic offices in our land. It amounted to the unfortunate letdown of the Palestinians, who always had seen us as their well-wishers. India went to the extent of having military alliances with Israel and holding joint military exercises with Israel and NATO countries. A series of military cooperation agreements were signed between India and Israel at the behest of the United States, which always had taken an anti-Indian stand on almost all international matters, ranging from the question of our membership in the UN Security Council to the question of bilateral ties between India and Pakistan. The BJP NDA government, which took over following the Congress regime, continued this pro-Israel, pro-US stand with much more vehemence and did away with whatever traces were left of the non-aligned policy. This only led to complete isolation of India in the realm of international relations. When the Indian government started aligning with the US, it chose to finish off the public sector institutions, which were established during the Soviet era, taking inspiration from the socialist policy held up by the Soviet Union. What we witness in independent India is the repeat of the divide and rule policy, which was evolved and implemented by the British earlier. Congress government adopted the very same policy and chose to turn one community against the other, and in the process ruined the basic structure of unity in diversity, which is crucial to secularism. In the process, the Congress went to the extreme of bringing down the secular government led by VP Singh by voting together with the BJP, a shocking experience to the secular-minded people. It has to be noted that it was that anti-secular stand of the Congress that helped the BJP to raise its numbers in the Lok Sabha from 2 to more than 300 now. Congress has to be held accountable for this. All through the regime, Congress was bent on demolishing the federal structure of the country, which was a great value enshrined in our constitution. It began with the ousting of the democratically elected EMS government of Kerala in 1959 and continued till the end of the Congress rule. The BJP too has adopted the same policy, and even the Supreme Court had to intervene at times to see that democratically elected governments are restored. The rights of the states were arbitrarily taken away by the center, and the states were at the losing end so far as revenue was concerned. The center consistently breached the promises to compensate, and this breach gets reflected even in the matter of GST. All these aspects prove that both the Congress and the BJP are birds of the same feather as far as democratic rights, federal principles, economic policy, external affairs, etc. are concerned. Against this backdrop, what is required at this point of time is joint struggles and joint movements, which would strengthen our constitution, democracy, secularism, and the sovereignty of the nation. The democratic rights of the common people have been jeopardized many times in independent India. Arbitrary detention without trial has been used to suppress the struggles of the working class. The left in India has taken a leading role in fighting against this in judicial and parliamentary forums and through mass movements. The case A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras has been a landmark in this fight. The legendary communist leader AKG fought against arbitrary detention in this case. The internal emergency, which was declared in June 1975, was yet another example of the non-commitment of the ruling classes to the democratic values and civil liberties. Today, the rights of the toiling masses are being trampled upon to protect the interest of corporate capital. The basic human rights, including the right to life, is under threat from barbaric acts like lynching by violent mobs. Communal frenzy is being encouraged to polarize and divide the society. In short, our basic values of democracy and secularism are facing substantial threat from the present dispensation. Secularism is something which can be realized only by forging unity among the masses who are compelled to fight for a decent living in our society. This has been the stand of the left since the days of freedom struggle. Unfortunately, this was not given the seriousness it deserved by the conservative sections of the Congress leadership. The lofty ideals of the nationalist struggle are being despised. The fabric of the Indian nation, which is aligned to communalism, is under severe attack. The lessons of the freedom movement, which taught us to fight shoulder to shoulder, forgetting caste, religion, and economic status, need to be reinforced for holding us together as a nation and fight against economic and social inequalities. Only this can enable us to march ahead towards achieving an egalitarian society in contrast to the concentration of the wealth and power that we witness today as a sequel to the neoliberal economical policies. We are in the cusp of history. The lessons of the nationalist movements and innumerable struggles of peasants and workers to throw off the imperialist regime are more relevant today than ever before. We can ignore them only at our own peril. Against this backdrop, what I have to point out is a four-pronged strategy. First, come to the aid of the sovereignty of our nation, both the economic and political. Second, defend our constitution and the constitutional institutions. Third, resist the menacing communal moves to turn India into a theocratic country and uphold the secular values. Fourth, make it doubly sure that our democracy survives the authoritarian onslaughts, imbibing the spirit of the nationalist movement. We talk the pledge that we rededicate ourselves to this land and its people. Thank you.